Welcome to the first video of this series. In this series, we are going to be looking at algebra questions, grade 12, and we are going to start with 2023, November 2023. So if you look at this paper, you have various questions ranging from quadratic equations, and then you have set equations, inequalities, simultaneous equations, and then you end with a special question. And in this question, you had 1.3, which is your exponents. Now let's start with the first question. So you are given x squared plus x minus 12 equals to 0, and you are asked to solve for x. So you are familiar with this from grade 10. And when you have a quadratic, what is important is to ask yourself, is the equation in standard form? And in this case, the answer is yes. It is in standard form. And once you have identified that your equation is in standard form, then you can move on to the next step, which is factorization. And because this is a quadratic trinomial, you must open two brackets and then you insert the relevant factors. So x multiplied by x will give you x squared. 4 multiplied by 3 will give you 12. Positive multiplied by negative will give you that negative. And as well, positive 4 minus 3 will give you 1, which is the coefficient of the middle term. And then you will find your two solutions, x equals to 4 and x equals to 3. The second question is a quadratic formula question. How do we know? This is your clue. Once you see this statement in brackets which says answer correct to 2 decimal places, that is a clear indicator that you must use a quadratic formula, because we can't do factors with decimals by head. So 1.2, you are given 3x squared minus 2x equals to 6. This is a quadratic equation. However, it is not in standard form. So we transpose the 6 from the right hand side to the left hand side, and that will be minus 6. So now we have our equation in standard form. So you write down your equation, your formula, your quadratic formula, and this formula you get from your formula sheet. Now make use of your formula sheet by writing the correct formula in your answers for the questions. Now you substitute all the relevant details, so you can see that from the standard form quadratic equation, a is equal to 3, b is minus 2, and c is equal to minus 6. And you can just put this in your calculator as is, and you will get your first answer being 1,79. That is 2 decimal places. And the other one is minus 1,12. The third question is a third equation, 1.1.3. So when you have a third equation, your first step is to check or ensure that you have isolated the set. That means the term with the square root must be on its own side. So fortunately in this question, the given problem has the root on its own side on the left hand side. So what you do is you square both sides. That is why we want to isolate the set is because we want to square it so that we get rid of the square root. So if you do that, now you have 2x plus 1. We no longer have a square root. And x minus 1 all squared means it is repeated twice. So you have 2x minus 1. So you deal with what is on the right hand side. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is minus x. Negative 1 times x is minus x. And negative times negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1. And once you are here, your aim now should be to get to standard form because you have a quadratic equation. So if you do that, we move everything to the right hand side. You can see that 2x was positive, but now it's negative. 1 was positive, but now it's negative. So if you simplify, you get 0 equals to x squared minus 4x. Now this is your standard form. Now it's very important to note that just because there is no constant, it doesn't mean it isn't there. It only tells you that c is equal to 0. So because you have two terms and you have something common there, you can take out a common factor. And then you can find your solution being x equals to 0 or x equals to positive 4. The next question is an inequality question, quadratic inequality. So firstly, we are given a quadratic inequality which is not in standard form. So our aim is to get it to standard form. So we transpose the 2x and we have minus 2x, and now we have standard form. We factorize, right, so we factorize what was given, and then we move on to drawing a rough sketch. So you can see that your critical values here are positive 3 and minus 1. Now the way that I always advise students to look at this is to say that your x-axis are your ground level, and which means that this section of the graph is underground and this section is above the ground. So because you have greater than, so that is above the ground. So that is from positive 3 to the right hand side and from negative 1 to the left hand side. And you can write your solution. So x is less than minus 1 or x is greater than 3. Look at the arrows. This one is pointing in the same direction as this arrow, as well as this arrow is pointing in the same direction as this arrow. Simultaneous equations. Now this is where you need to be very methodical with what you are doing. So we are given in this question two equations, and we already see that we might have an issue because we have fractions for our second equation. So you label your equation as your first step. So you label the equations as equation 1 and equation 2 respectively. And then you look and check which is the simpler equation. The simpler equation would be the one with the coefficient of a variable being 1. Like in this equation 1, you have 1x. So what you want to do is you want to leave x on its own. So you transpose the positive 2 to the right hand side, and you have x equals to 2y minus 2, and you label that equation 3. The next step is now you must substitute in the unused equation your equation 3. So where there was x, now we have 2y minus 2, which is in red. Right. Because you have a fraction and it's difficult to work with fraction for most people, what you need to do is you need to find an LCD, your lowest common denominator, which is simply found by just multiplying your denominators. So if you look at the first term, you have 2y minus 2, it's there. You have y for the second term, it's there. And for the third term, it's 1 over 1. So 1 is there even though it's not shown. So you multiply everything by your LCD. So you can see that this will divide this and you'll be left with 1y. And then this y will divide this y and you're left with 1 times this, which will be this. And then 1 times your LCD will be your LCD. And now we are simplifying. We lose the brackets here because they have no purpose. Here we multiply in y times y is y squared, and then you have your 2. Y times negative 2 is negative 2y, and because this is a quadratic equation, we are now rushing to find the standard form, and this is our standard form. And from here you can factorize and then find your y values. Y equals to half or y equals to 2. And then because you have your y values, you can go back to equation 3 to substitute to get the values of x. So we substitute half, and so we substitute half here and we substitute 2 here, and we get our values of x. Finally, for this paper, we have our special question, which in this case is an exponential equation. So what we need to do is to reverse the laws of exponents. So you can see here you have plus, and you can see here you have plus. So if we reverse that, it means we're multiplying 2 to the power m times 2 to the power 1, as well as 3 to the power n multiplied by 3 to the power 2. So now, if you look on the left hand side, you have 2 to the power m, 2 to the power m, so there's a common factor there. And we can also find another common factor, which is 3 to the power n. So we take out our common factors, and then 2 plus 1 is 3, 3 squared is 9, 9 minus 1 is 8. We divide such that the numbers with variables m and n are on the same side. And if we do that, you have 2 to the power n over 3 to the power n equals to 8 over 3. And then once you are in this position, what is important is to think about your next step, which is I'm experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty. Yeah, sorted. Right, so you have 2 to the power m equals to 2 to the power 3. So you can match there. M is equal to 3 and n is equal to 1. And that means m plus n is 3 plus 1, which is 4. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It will really help the channel. Until next time.